Welcome to Section 2 of Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. In this lesson, you will meet Al Switzler, another of the 4 researchers who developed this material. Al will teach the second principle, learn to look. The first principle, start with heart, suggests that the first key to mastering crucial conversations is to work on ourselves first. We do so by focusing on what we really want and avoiding sucker's choices. If you've practiced start with heart, you approach your crucial conversation with your goal clearly in mind. Also, you've committed yourself to avoid a sucker's choice between silence or violence. Instead, you're going for dialogue. How do you create dialogue? First, by learning to look. During crucial conversations, the dialogue smart see more, so they are able to do more using later principles to keep things moving towards results. Let's listen to Al describe how they do this.
Our focus in this session is to learn to look. We need to get good at seeing what's going on in the conversations that matter most, in noticing when conversations are working and when they're not and why, at viewing ourselves, seeing how we are impacting our conversations personally. That's where we're headed in this session. I'm going to begin by sharing something that had an enormous impact on my life. I first read it about 30 years ago. I remember thinking at the time that it was cool. I also remember thinking that although it was not the first time I had heard the phrase, it was the first time I had seen it in print. And that phrase is something I have remembered almost every day for these past many years. In Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, Annie Dillard recalls that when she was a young girl, she would place pennies on the sidewalk, then hide and watch people as they found them. Most people would say, "Oh, it's just a penny," and not bother picking it up. Others would pick up the penny and smile at their good fortune. It made their day. Annie wrote this: "I've been thinking about seeing. The world is fairly studded and strewn with pennies cast broadside from a generous hand. But, and this is the point, who gets excited by a mere penny? If you crouch motionless on a bank to watch a tremulous ripple thrill on the water, and are rewarded by the sight of a muskrat kit paddling from its den, will you count that sight a chip of copper only, and go your rueful way? It is poverty indeed when a man is so malnourished and fatigued that he won't stoop to pick up a penny. But if you cultivate a healthy poverty and simplicity, so that finding a penny will literally make your day, then, since the world is in fact planted with pennies, you have with your poverty bought a lifetime of days. It's that simple. What you see is what you get." She continues with this point: "Seeing is, of course, very much a matter of verbalization. Unless I call my attention to what passes before my eyes, I simply won't see it. It is not merely unnoticed, but in the full, clear sense of the word, unseen." So what does looking and seeing have to do with dialogue? What does noticing and being aware have to do with results and with relationships? The challenge here is that seeing is often very hard, and knowing what to look for can be equally difficult. Here are a couple of examples. You've heard, no doubt, just like I have, statements like these in a conflict between 2 co-workers where they are discussing a schedule change. One of them says, "I am not yelling," and not one person within earshot believes him. Or at home, in a discussion about a recent purchase, the wife says, "I am not mad," and the husband doesn't believe her. When we witness and hear statements like these, we ask ourselves, can't they see the irony here? Can't they see what's going on? Maybe like me, sometimes you say things and do things that are visible to others and are not so visible to yourself. At least they are not visible at that moment. This is what happens in some conversations. When we are in serious discussions, when we're talking about risky and emotional issues, we can get so caught up in the content and so absorbed by the details that we fail to look and to see some of the important conditions that are at risk. We focus so hard on the content or the arguments or the logic that we fail to notice other issues that are really important, issues like safety and respect and purpose. Let's listen in on a team where a manager is interviewing a few employees to find out what they are thinking about the company's culture, about things that are working and things that need to be improved. They are all sitting around a nice conference table. They are scheduled to meet for about an hour. The manager begins the conversation with a brief introduction and a question.
Well, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Scott Wilkinson. I'm the manager of information services. So I guess we can get started. If you could change one thing around here, what would it be?
I'm a little tired of hearing about the latest changes on the 6 o'clock news.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You know, you people are so far out of line. Mr. Pearson is taking great steps to improve the communications around here, and all you seem to be able to do is sit around and complain. Frankly, I'm shocked. Now, I would like to get back to business, and I'd like to talk about some concerns you have that have nothing to do with communications, because that subject is closed, okay? Now, what other issues do you have? Come on, people, this is the time to talk. What other concerns do you have?
The manager here is making an all too common mistake. His actions made the conversation unsafe, and he failed to notice his role, and he failed to notice what in the process wasn't working. He can now ask and ask and ask, but unless he sees what's not working and his role in it, there's not much likelihood of a successful outcome. There's almost no chance that truthful information will be shared or made visible. There are huge costs associated with communication behaviors like this. People will defer. Employees may spend time and waste time gossiping. People will not speak up even when asked, and thus problems will linger, decisions will be less effective, relationships will suffer. This short and admittedly obvious example with a boss and a team highlights the focus of this session. How do we learn to look? How do you learn to look? What do you look for if you want to improve dialogue and thus improve results and relationships? In this session, we'll cover a few issues about looking. How to notice when conversations become crucial. How to notice when conversations become unsafe. How to notice when conversations move away from dialogue and move towards silence or violence. And finally, how to see your impact during crucial conversations. That is, how to notice what you do when things get tough. We call this your style under stress. Becoming aware of our style under stress helps us stay in dialogue and avoid silence or violence and the costs associated with each. By this point, and this is just a guess, I imagine that you've noticed a subtle theme. We need to learn to look. Annie Dillard was right. What you see is what you get. One of the first things that people with dialogue smarts look for is that moment when a conversation changes. Sometimes conversations are just cruising along. They're filled with small talk and banter. These are normal conversations about the details of work and life, and they're working just fine. At other times, they notice a sudden shift. The conversation has just become risky or emotional, or the shift can be very subtle, but the situation is the same. The conversation has just become crucial. To clarify, let me give you an example of a conversation that is not crucial. These kinds of conversations fill our lives. A graduate student in English at Auburn University was invited with a few faculty members to a luncheon with a famous Southern agrarian author, a novelist of some renown. This graduate student was envied by the rest of the students and by myself, a young faculty member who was also not invited. After the luncheon, a group was questioning this lucky lunch-goer eagerly. "Did you talk to him?" "Of course," said the student. "What did you say?" "I said, 'Will you please pass the butter?'" This was not a crucial conversation, nor are the interactions generally that include discussions about weather, your favorite team, your last vacation. Most conversations about work, about technical matters, even deadlines are also not crucial. Remember what a crucial conversation is. It is one that has high stakes, differing opinions, and often comes with a history that causes people to be emotionally involved. How do poor communicators spot these crucial conversations? They don't. They're clueless most of the time. When such a conversation goes badly, they miss it. They can be heard making statements like these. What's their problem? "Hey, that's the luck of the draw. You just can't work with people like that. Well, win some, lose some." oh, it doesn't matter in the long run anyway. How about the difference between bad communicators and good? The good communicators have good intentions, but too often they get so caught up in the content that they don't see the dynamics of the situation. They don't see the process, the conditions that are helping or hurting. Thus, they use their debating or discussing skills and habits and press on. They press on to make their points, to shoot down the logic of the other person's point of view. And often they miss some of the signs that show the other person is, for example, deferring. They have shut down or given up. We're not just looking at the difference between good and bad. We want to know the difference between the good and the best. The people who are best at dialogue, whether consciously or unconsciously, see that the conversation has become crucial. They see it early, engage skills that are needed to stay in dialogue, and thus avoid the costs of the alternatives like debate, arguments, cold shoulders, silent treatments, power games, and so on. My experience is that noticing the moment a conversation becomes a crucial conversation is a key factor that differentiates the good and the best. The good catch it later, try to fix it, and often do, but this takes time and has some negative consequences. But the best see it quickly and quickly adjust and keep the dialogue going without having to repair the relationship. The evidence that the best are doing this shows up in a number of ways. They make statements about nonverbal reactions that they are seeing in others or in themselves. Statements like these: "Oh, I see you're frustrated." Or, "I'm feeling myself getting frustrated. Could we slow down and talk about this one point for a moment?" Or, "I can tell this issue is really important to you." Or, "We see this issue very differently. I'd like to know where you're coming from." In the rest of this audio course, we'll discuss many skills for mastering crucial conversations. Right now, I just want to make the point that people who have mastered crucial conversations notice when conversations become crucial, and then they are especially alert to use their dialogue skills. It's not easy. This skill is not obtained by the sprinkling of magic dust, but learning what the most effective communicators have mastered is worth some effort. The dialogue smart are effective at spotting the moment a conversation becomes crucial because they use a third eye or a third ear. Most people give all their attention to the content of a conversation. They have two eyes and two ears focused on what is being said. The most effective communicators, however, use a so-called third eye or third ear to look at the conditions. What's working? What's not working? When are the conditions making it safe to say anything, and when are they not? That's where we're going next.